So welcome to this new video, the second of the converse series. We'll try to translate the next part of Miku sensei's video. Once again, subscribe to her channel and add a like. By the way, I recommend that you rewatch the previous extracts so that you can check if you understand and so that you have context in mind. You can also try to redo the listening test because maybe you'll catch more things than last time. Okay, so let's get started. 実はこれからインタビューする人は私の先輩で、私がメキシコで日本語を教えていた時の先輩です。So I know what you're thinking. What the hell is that sentence? Like it's impossible with just beginner. But actually you can, and this is why we're studying such a long sentence, because I could just have skipped it or make it shorter. But I won't do it because I want you to see that first, if you spot the right words, the right particles, etc., you can still understand what she says, like the whole picture of what she says, when you're listening. And then second, if you take your time, if you can read the sentence and you can take your time, you can translate it. So don't be afraid of sentences that are too long, because when the grammar is actually not so complicated and here it's not so complicated, you can translate it. And this is by translating long sentences that you will get used to it. So of course it's not a sentence for beginners, but it's to show you that you can still do it, to give you kind of the tools with long sentences. So first, how can you kind of understand what she says while it's such a long sentence with, things that you don't understand in it? Try to catch things that are simple and that you can understand, okay? So I will read the sentence once again and try to catch things that you understand and that might be very important to understand what she wants to say. 実はこれからインタビューする人は私の先輩で、私がメキシコで日本語を教えていた時の先輩です。So I think that what you can understand right away is 私の先輩, which is very important information, and 人は私の先輩. 人は私の先輩. So we're talking about someone, a person, and we understand that this person is 私の先輩, my senpai, so her senpai. You can also add another information because インタビューする人は私の先輩. インタビューする人は私の先輩. So you don't quite understand the grammar here, but just before 人, you hear インタビュー。インタビューする人は私の先輩. So maybe if you try guessing, you might understand that. Okay, someone is her senpai, and maybe that person, he is the person she's going to interview. インタビューする人は私の先輩. And if you understand that, then you're fine. It's completely fine. Then, second part of the sentence, 私がメキシコで日本語を教えていた時の先輩です. So here, the sentence is very, very long and you will be completely confused at the end because it's a sentence that is too long for a beginner to understand it. Like half the sentence you might feel completely confused and feel like you lose track, you see? But whatever, just ignore what's too complicated and try to just figure out what you know, even if it means that you have to cut half of the sentence. So what you can understand is that first you have watashi ga. Okay, this is simple. We understand that watashi, I, is the subject of the verb that is coming. Then you have Mexico de. This one too, you can get it. The de, which obviously is not going to be the means de, because Mexico is a place, so Mexico, of course. So it is the place where the action of the verb is or was taking place. So we understand that I'm doing something or was doing something or maybe will do something in Mexico. So for this, of course, you have to wait for the verb. But until here, you can understand. And then, 日本語を教えていた. 日本語を 教えていた. And here you have to grasp the verb 教える. If you don't understand 教える, of course you lack a clue that is too important. But if you get it, so 教える to teach, then okay, 日本語を教える to teach Japanese. Who was doing it? 私が日本語を教えていた. So I was teaching 日本語 and where? メキシコで in Mexico. And then 時の先輩です. You absolutely have no clue of what this could mean, but it's fine. It's fine. You've got two pieces of information that are very important. First, the person that probably she's going to interview, we guess that she's talking about that person is her senpai. And then that at some point in her life, she was teaching Japanese in Mexico. And then if you try to think a bit little about it, so of course for this you need time. So in a real conversation, you can't think this much. But if you have time, then you can try to guess. Okay, so she's speaking about someone who is her senpai, and then she says that she was teaching Japanese in Mexico, and she ends with Toki no senpai desu. And so maybe you can understand what it means. So I'm not going to spoil. We will try to translate the sentence, and then you will see if your assumption was good or not. But right away, you can try to guess what she wants to mean. So just one piece of advice is that you should never guess anything when you try to understand and to translate something. First, you have to follow the grammar, okay? First, follow the grammar, everything that you know, and you translate according to the grammar without trying to guess anything. Because if you've got the grammar, then it means that you don't have to guess anything. And when we are beginner, since it's complicated because we're not used to this new language, our brain often tries to guess things randomly, you see? Never let your brain try to guess things randomly. Follow the grammar. But when there are grammar things that you don't understand, then of course you're allowed to guess and you have to guess. But what I mean here is that do not guess when you know the grammar. Guess things that, you don't know. So you have to guess, of course. And the second thing that I mean here is that when you're a beginner, since this is new grammar, your brain, once again, will be a bit confused. So he will try to just catch some words, some keywords, so of course it is important, but your brain will stop here. It will just catch the words like senpai, interview, nihongo, and then he will kind of randomly mix these words together to make some meaning that looks like it's fine, you see? But if you let your brain do that, then in many situations you will see that you are going to do some huge mistranslations, because what matters the most are not the words, okay? Because if only words mattered, then you don't even need to learn the language. I can give the vocabulary to anyone that didn't learn Japanese, and then he can make his mix trying to understand what it means. So what matters first is the grammar. So don't let your brain pick up random words he hears and make some weird mix out of it. Listen to the particles first. Listen to the grammar first. Watashi no senpai, my senpai. Watashi ga, it's a subject. Mexico de, it's the place. Nihongo o, it's the object. You see? So before even thinking about the fact that you have watashi, Mexico, and Nihongo, you should think about the fact that you have ga, de, and o. And this way, first, you are not going to mistranslate, but then you are going to use your brain to think in Japanese. So this is very important, okay? So this is some kind of theoretical advice, but this is very important. Never let your brain do kind of random things, okay? And what matters most is not vocabulary, but grammar. So, now that we've seen the oral hints you can grasp to understand the whole picture of what she says, let's get into details. So first, what you can know is that this de actually is des. So we'll see later why des becomes de, but whatever, it is des. And here in the sentence, you can stop the sentence here, add a period, and then you have two sentences. And this is already getting a little bit easier. So you have 実はこれからインタビューする人は私の先輩です。私がメキシコで日本語を教えていた時の先輩です。And you see that you just have two this sentences. So first, let's understand the first one. Don't you think that you have something that's very weird in this first sentence? Try to think about it, press pause, and try to find the thing that's really weird. It shouldn't be like this. So the weird thing is that you have a verb in the middle of nowhere. Right in the middle of a sentence, you have a verb with nothing else, and it's a bit weird, right? So when you have a verb in front of a noun, stuck to a noun, it is a relative. Well, what we call a relative, because they don't really exist in Japanese, but it's close to our relatives. So what does it mean? It means that this verb that is in front of the noun modifies the noun. So it's just like an adjective. See it as an adjective when you say, for example, 面白いmanga. 面白い, an adjective that modifies manga, so an interesting manga. It is the same thing, but with a verb and actually a little sentence, because of course you can have not only a verb, but a little sentence that you stick in front of a noun to add some precisions about that noun. So let's get into details to understand how it works, because this is very important. You will find relatives all the time in Japanese, and you will struggle a bit with it at the beginning because you will have to kind of reverse your brain. But if you get used to it, then you will see that you will make huge progress in Japanese because it's so useful and you will see them all the time. So first, relative clause actually is an English term. We say relative clause because in most situations we add a relative pronoun. So what's a relative pronoun? It's like when you say the man who is running. Who is a relative pronoun. The man that I see. That is a relative pronoun. In Japanese, you have no relative pronoun, so you can't call them relative. It's rather a noun modifying clause. And so you see that the purpose of this thing is to modify a noun, so to bring precisions about that noun. So the problem is that it's very easy to spot the relative in itself because, like I told you, when you have a verb stuck in front of a noun, it means that you have a relative. But you don't know where the relative starts, and this is where it's a bit complicated. So, is it only インタビューする or is it これからインタビューする? So, since this is the first relative we see, I'm telling you, これから is part of the relative. Then, what you have to remember is that you translate the head noun first. So, the head noun is the noun that is being modified. It's the head noun because, as you see, he's like the boss of this relative. It's like the locomotive, you see, the big boss of the train, and everything follows this head noun. So first, you have to translate the head noun. Why? Because in English, in this situation, you add precisions after the noun. But in Japanese, when you have precisions on a noun, it's always before the noun. And this is why you have in English to first translate the head noun and then the relative. So let's see some few examples. So let's start just with non-phrases, okay? Let's not make a full sentence right away because it will be too complicated. We'll just start with the relative plus the noun. So, 昨日作ったケーキ. So, you know that keiki is the head noun. So you translate it first, the cake. And then try to feel that 昨日作った is some precision about that cake. So, 昨日作った means I made yesterday, and this I made yesterday is a precision about cake. It is modifying cake. So, the cake that I made yesterday, or just the cake I made yesterday. And you see that it's quite similar to Japanese, actually. It's just that you have to translate the head noun first, and then the precision. So, 昨日作ったケーキ, the cake I made yesterday. Next one. 母が買った服. 母が買った服. So try to do it. Press pause. So first we translate 服, the clothes, and then 母が買った, my mother bought. So the clothes my mother bought. And you see that my mother bought is just some precision about clothes. Try to start feeling it, okay? Because saying that you should translate the head noun first is kind of an artificial way of translating it. Because, of course, at some point you will have to feel that it is like the right order. So try to read it many, many times in your head. 母が買った服. 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 And try to feel that 母が買った is a precision on clothes. 母が買った服. The clothes my mother bought. 母が買った服. The clothes that my mother bought. You see, try to feel it. Try to feel it in Japanese. And it looks like it's like a useless exercise to just repeat in your head. Try to feeling it. But it works. It works. And at some point you will start feeling it. And then you will translate it like naturally. And then next, わかったこと. So same thing. Try to translate it. So わかったこと, わかったこと. So try to feel it just like it was an adjective, you see. わかったこと, 面白いこと. 面白いこと, わかったこと. It's the same, okay? It's a precision about こと. So the things we understood. The things we understood. You see, it's just like an adjective. It gives some precision about things. So 面白いこと, interesting things. わかったこと, the things we understood. So of course you're not going to feel it right away. It will take time. But try when you see a relative to repeat it like this, to try feeling it. And you can use the English translation to kind of try to feel it. And last thing to know is that in a relative, the verb is always in plain form. Of course, it can be in polite form because the polite form is used to close the sentence. You see, the sentence is over, so you can add the politeness. But since here it's absolutely not over at all, it's just a precision about a noun, it's just part of a noun phrase, so it would be no sense to add politeness here. So it's always in plain form, and of course it can be a past tense, can be non-past, it can be negative form, it can be anything you want. It just has to be in plain form. So it means that to make relatives, you will have to learn the plain form conjugation. Don't worry, we will learn it. Anyway, for the moment, remember that ta, when you see ta, it is past. It is past. Whatever it is, it's past. So translate it as, a past tense. So now try to translate これからインタビューする人. Just this part, of course, not the whole sentence because you might get confused. Just this part. これからインタビューする人。And so it gives you the person, so head noun first, okay? And then the precision. The person I will interview from now on. これからインタビューする人。The person I'm going to interview from now on. But so here is a tip, because in long sentences, of course, since you're a beginner and you're not accustomed to all of this, it will be quite complicated to face a relative like this. So at first, what you can do to understand the general meaning of the sentence, you can delete the relative. If you delete the relative, then you're left with the core sentence. You have to find the core sentence, you translate it, and then you add the relative. This way, it will be way easier to translate it. So for example, in our sentence, if you delete the relative, you're left with 実は人は私の先輩です. So it doesn't make any sense because it would mean, in fact, the people are my senpai without anything before 人. It's a bit weird. But you can just add a その, for example, or a この, or whatever. And it gives you 実はその人は私の先輩です. And then it's like super easy, right? In fact, that person is my senpai. So at first you can do this. It works. Sometimes you won't have to add anything. You can just delete the relative. But sometimes, since the relative is a bit important, without it, the meaning changes a little bit too much, or like grammatically, it becomes weird. Basically, you just add その, and then you will see it will work. So now let's get to the last thing we are going to study in this video, which is the de at the end of the first part. So I told you that this de was des. But why does des becomes de? Actually, this is what we call a te form. This te form, we're going to study it a lot. Because first, it's not so simple, and then because you are going to see it all the time. It's so much used in Japanese. But today, let's keep things simple. Let's just remember that the te form is used to connect verbs, adjectives, and, well, sentences. So basically, you can translate it by and. And here, be very careful, because you've learned the to particle, and it also means and. But to is only used between nouns. You can never use it between verbs or adjectives, or even at the beginning of a sentence. For example, if you want to say blah blah blah, and then I went to the restaurant. You can absolutely not translate this and with to. It's impossible. To is just used to make a noun phrase, so to connect two nouns together, like, for example, in a cat and a dog, a house and a building, a forest and a lake. And that's it. So when you want to say and between anything that is not a noun, you have to use the te form. And to be more precise, in this sentence, it's used to make a parallelism. So what's a parallelism? It's when you want to add two different pieces of information. So you have one piece of information, another piece of information, and you want to connect them together to make one sentence out of them. So of course, you have a te form for any verb and any adjective. But in this video, we'll just study the te form for des. So it is de. Des becomes de when you put it into a te form. So let's see a few examples. For example, you want to say アメリカ人です。14歳です. So you see that here you want to give two pieces of information about yourself, but you are making two sentences out of them. But of course, you want to just make one sentence out of them. You'd rather say, I'm American and I'm 14 instead of saying I'm American, I am 14. And so make such short sentences that like no one says in real life. So the only thing that you have to do is then putting this into a te form and then you connect both sentences. アメリカ人で14歳です。I'm American and I'm 14. Next sentence, this time with an adjective so that you see it works. You want to say, このレシピは簡単です。美味しいです。So, this recipe is easy. It's good. You see, two pieces of information about recipe. And so you want to make one sentence out of it. So you just transform this into a te form. このレシピは簡単で美味しいです。This recipe is easy and good and it's good. So for the moment, keep it simple. If you want to say and between two sentences, two verbs, or two adjectives, you use a te form. So for the moment, you can only do it with this. But then in the next videos, we see, of course, how to do it with verbs, etc., etc. And you will see that even for adjectives, it's not going to be so simple. So anyway, you have all you need to translate this first part of the sentence. So press pause and try to do it one more time, translating everything, even the te form, even if, of course, the sentence is not over. So, 実は actually, これからインタビューする人は the person I'm going to interview now 私の先輩で is my senpai and so the sentence is not over. When you have a te form, you understand that the sentence is not over, something is coming and you're waiting for it. Here you understand that she's speaking about the person she's going to interview. She has one piece of information about him, but with this de, you understand that she's going to add another piece of information about him to kind of introduce him, you see? So you are waiting for the next piece of information. So when you are listening to this and you hear watashi no senpai de, right away your brain must think, okay, she's going to add something else about him. And that's it. So I know we didn't even finish translating the whole sentence, but you will see that the sentence is pretty cool because you are going to see like all the basic grammar stuff that you need to start making complex sentence. So it's pretty cool. And so of course it will take 2 videos to translate the whole sentence, but you will learn a lot out of the sentence. So it's pretty good. Once again, don't be impatient. You've seen how the sentence was long and difficult, so just be happy being able to translate it and to understand it. I will never keep saying this, but never torture yourself thinking it's not fast enough, you're not fast enough, you're not making any progress, because you are. And the most important thing is to keep motivated and to go at your own pace. You can't learn tons of things in one day. Of course, it's not possible. So just be patient and you will see that being patient, you will improve much more than if you were impatient and you were studying 10 different things at the same time that you wouldn't remember, you wouldn't assimilate. It's better this way. Believe me, it's like the kanjis. You're not going to learn the 2,000 kanjis at once. Take your time, learn them one by one, and you will see that at the end, you will know all of them.